The music was playing, the guests were seated, and the cameras were ready to capture every precious moment. It was my brother's big day, the kind of event families dream of. But me, I wasn't there, not because I didn't want to be, but because my parents told me, on your brother's wedding day, it's better if you're not there. Imagine that. The day the family celebrates unity and love. They decided the best contribution I could make was disappearing. Now, if you're expecting me to say I was shocked, I wasn't. Disappointed? Sure. Hurt? Absolutely. But shocked? Not really. This was the role I had been cast in for as long as I could remember. The daughter who was too much when she dreamed, too loud when she laughed, and not enough when she tried. My brother got the spotlight, the applause, the blessings. I got the cold reminder that my very existence was an inconvenience. So when the wedding invitations went out, mine came with a side note. Don't bother showing up. But here's where irony works its magic. Because the universe has a way of flipping the script when you least expect it. That same wedding where I was erased, it would become the stage where my presence, or lack of it, stole the show. And it all started with one line from the bride, a line so simple yet so powerful, it silenced an entire room and left my parents frozen. But wait, before I tell you what she said, before I reveal why her words hit harder than any speech, any vow, any toast, you need to know who I was. Because moments like these don't just fall out of the sky. They're built on years of pain, sacrifice, and silence that nobody bothered to see. See, stories like mine don't begin with a single cruel comment or one embarrassing moment. They begin way earlier, in the little cracks that grow into canyons. They begin when a child's laughter is mocked instead of cherished, when her dreams are treated like foolish distractions, when she learns, slowly but surely, that her place in the family will always be behind everyone else. That was me, the invisible one, the one who clapped for others, but never got a cheer in return. The one who studied late at night, worked twice as hard only to be told it wasn't enough. And by the time the wedding rolled around, the decision had already been made. I wasn't part of the picture. But here's the thing. Sometimes the people you try hardest to erase turn out to be unforgettable. Sometimes the one you silence ends up being the loudest echo in the room. And sometimes being told to step aside is exactly what positions you for the twist nobody sees coming. So let's rewind. Let's go back to the little girl I used to be, to the struggles that shaped me, and to the journey that led to that one unforgettable wedding day. Because only then will you understand why the bride's first words changed everything. Welcome, story lovers. From where are you watching? Drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. I wasn't always the forgotten daughter. I wasn't always the extra seat at the dinner table, the one whose name was rarely called unless something went wrong. Once I had dreams, bright, wild, impossible-seeming dreams, and I believed in them with the kind of stubborn faith only a young girl can carry. But dreams have a way of being suffocated in homes where your worth is measured not by who you are, but by how well you fit into someone else's idea of good enough. I grew up in a house where laughter came with conditions. My brother, the golden child, could stumble through life, and even his mistakes were treated as adorable quirks. If he spilled juice, it was, boys will be boys. If I did, suddenly I was careless, irresponsible, a burden who couldn't handle even the simplest tasks. It's strange how children start believing the scripts handed to them. Slowly, I learned to hold my tongue, to laugh softer, to shrink myself so I wouldn't take up too much space. But shrinking never made them love me more. It only made me invisible. At school, though, I was different. Teachers saw me, the real me. The girl who devoured books, who stayed after class to solve extra math problems, who dreamed not of weddings and dresses, but of building a career where her mind, not her appearance, mattered. I wasn't the prettiest or the loudest, but I was determined. One teacher, Mrs. Jenkins, once wrote on my report card, "This girl will go far, if only the world lets her." I clung to that line like it was scripture. My dream was medicine. I wanted to become a doctor, not because I thought it would make me rich or admired, but because I wanted to heal. I wanted to give people what I never had growing up, the feeling of being cared for, noticed, valued. I studied harder than anyone I knew. While other girls in my neighborhood planned their prom dresses, I was buried in anatomy textbooks borrowed from the library. I thought hard work was enough to silence the voices that told me I wasn't worthy. But in my family, my efforts only fueled more criticism. "Why waste so much time on books?" My father sneered once. "Who's going to marry you if all you do is study?" To them, my ambition wasn't admirable. It was laughable. My brother could barely pass his classes, yet he was still the pride of the family. I could ace every test, but to my parents it was nothing more than showing off. Still, I pressed forward. Because dreams don't die easily, not when they're the only light guiding you through a tunnel of constant dismissal. Then came the year everything collapsed. My mother got sick, really sick. A diagnosis that shook the household like an earthquake. Hospital visits, bills piling up, fear thick in the air. My father's paycheck stretched thin, and suddenly the burden of survival fell on everyone's shoulders. I wanted to help. I wanted to take a part-time job while continuing my studies. But my parents made the choice for me. Forget school. Family comes first. And by family, they didn't mean all of us. They meant my brother. He was still the future. I was the designated caregiver, so I shelved my dreams. One by one, I packed away my textbooks. I stopped applying to colleges. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd go back once things stabilized. But temporary turned permanent, and the little girl who wanted to wear a white coat and carry a stethoscope slowly vanished. Instead, I became the silent nurse of the house, the one who learned how to read lab reports, how to measure medicine doses, how to sit beside my mother in the middle of the night when her pain made her cry out. I gave pieces of myself away until there was hardly anything left. But here's the thing about broken dreams. They don't vanish completely. They live inside you, like ghosts you can't exorcise. Every night when the house was quiet, I'd sit with my old notebooks tracing diagrams of the human body. I kept my brain sharp, memorizing terms no one else cared about. It was my rebellion, my way of refusing to let go entirely. Meanwhile, I worked. Not glamorous jobs, not dream jobs, just survival jobs. Babysitting for neighbors, stocking shelves at the grocery store, taking whatever shifts nobody else wanted. I learned how to stretch $20 across a week. I learned how to smile at customers while my feet throbbed from standing 8 hours straight. I told myself it was just a detour, that one day somehow I'd circle back to the road I lost. But in my house, my sacrifices were invisible. My brother still carried the crown. He went to college, funded partly by the money I brought in from odd jobs. He lived the life I had once envisioned for myself, though without the passion, without the drive. It was simply handed to him. My parents praised him at every dinner party, bragging about his potential. And me, I was introduced as the one who helps around the house. The helper, not the achiever, not the dreamer. Just the background character in a story that was never allowed to be mine. And still, I endured, because what choice did I have? Yet cracks began to form, nights when I cried into my pillow, silently, so no one would hear. Days when the weight of invisibility pressed so heavy I felt I might disappear altogether. Times when even my reflection in the mirror felt like a stranger's face. But here's what they didn't see. Even in those cracks, resilience grew. I may have been silenced, but I wasn't gone. I may have been mocked, but I wasn't broken. My laughter, though ridiculed, still flickered inside me like a stubborn flame refusing to go out. And that flame carried me forward, through heartbreaks, through betrayals, through years of being erased in my own family story. By the time my brother's wedding was announced, I had become a master at swallowing pain. I knew how to nod politely when overlooked, how to clap for others even when no one clapped for me. Outwardly, I was calm, invisible, unremarkable, but inside, I was a storm waiting for release. Because while my parents had succeeded in painting me as the daughter who never amounted to much, they hadn't destroyed the core of me. I still had scars, yes, but I also had strength. And though they didn't know it, the stage they tried so hard to erase me from would soon become the stage where I was finally undeniably seen. And that moment started long before the wedding hall. It started in the years of struggle, in the countless sacrifices no one acknowledged. in the invisible labor of a girl who gave everything and received nothing in return. So if you've ever wondered how a daughter becomes the ghost in her own family, now you know. But this ghost, she wasn't about to stay invisible forever. Turning points rarely arrive with fireworks. They sneak in quietly, disguised as small moments, almost easy to miss. For me, it wasn't one thunderclap of destiny, but a slow series of flickers. Tiny sparks that hinted maybe, just maybe, my story wasn't finished. It started at the community health clinic. I had taken a side job cleaning in the evenings. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid, and I was good at making places shine. One night, while wiping down a desk, I noticed an open medical chart left behind. The handwriting, messy and rushed, was hard to read. But the dosage scribbled down? Wrong. I knew it instantly because of the years I had spent caring for my mother. My hands froze. The patient was scheduled for treatment the next day. If no one corrected it, the mistake could be dangerous. My brain screamed, "Don't interfere. Stay quiet. You're just the cleaner." But another voice inside whispered, "You know this. You can help." I couldn't ignore it. So I left a discreet sticky note on the chart. "Please double-check this dosage." I didn't sign it. I didn't want attention. I just wanted to prevent harm. The next week, the head nurse stopped me in the hall. "Hey," she said, "you left that note, didn't you?" My heart pounded. She wasn't angry. In fact, her eyes softened. That was sharp. Saved us from a serious mistake. It was the first time in years someone had looked at me not as the girl who helps, but as someone who mattered. For the first time in forever, I felt seen. Soon, little things started to happen. The doctors would occasionally ask my opinion on patient care routines, impressed that I seemed to know more than most helpers. A volunteer coordinator suggested I take a certification course. "You've got the mind for this," she told me. It was flattering, tempting, but terrifying. My parents had hammered into me that I wasn't meant for more. I was the background daughter, the one whose presence was a nuisance. Could I really break free of that script? And then there was my brother, always looming like a shadow of comparison. By now, he was engaged, the wedding plans in full swing. Every conversation at home revolved around flowers, venues, menus. My mother gushed about him as if he were royalty. Meanwhile, I worked nights, came home exhausted, and listened to them complain I didn't contribute enough. But the real spark, the one that lit the fire, came during those wedding preparations. See, my parents insisted the wedding was too expensive for extras. They claimed every dollar was stretched to its limit. That's why, they said, there was no money for me to enroll in a training course I had quietly researched. They waved me off, telling me education was a waste at my age. But then, one night, I overheard my father bragging on the phone about a surprise gift for my brother. A down payment on a house. My chest burned. All those years of sacrifice, of me working odd jobs, of me shelving my own dreams. And now, suddenly, there was money. Just not for me. It wasn't about jealousy. It was about justice. I realized then that no matter how much I gave, they would never see me. Not because I wasn't enough, but because they chose not to. That night, something hardened inside me. I wasn't going to beg for scraps of recognition anymore. If I wanted a future, I'd have to build it myself, even if it meant breaking away from them completely. I enrolled in the course anyway. A certification in medical assisting. It wasn't full-fledged medicine, but it was a start. I paid the tuition with money I had saved secretly over years. Tips from babysitting, small bonuses, even coins in a jar. It felt like rebellion, like reclaiming a part of myself they thought they'd erased. But with new hope came new obstacles. The schedule was brutal. Clinic shifts at night, classes during the day, family responsibilities in between. I barely slept. My body ached. And when my parents found out, the ridicule came in waves. "Who do you think you are?" My father scoffed. "You'll never finish," my mother added. "And even if you do, it won't matter. You're not the smart one in this family." Their words stung. But this time, something was different. Instead of folding, I let their mockery fuel me. Every insult became another brick in the foundation of my determination. There were others who shaped this chapter too. The head nurse at the clinic became a quiet mentor, slipping me extra reading material, encouraging me to keep going. A classmate, Maria, shared her own story of escaping a toxic family, reminding me I wasn't alone. But there were rivals, too. People who resented that just a cleaner was daring to rise. One jealous coworker mocked me openly, whispering to others that I was pretending to be smart. Her words mirrored my parents', but this time I didn't break. I kept showing up, kept proving myself, kept going, and all the while the wedding loomed closer. The family obsessed over every detail, drowning in florists and caterers, guest lists, and rehearsal dinners. My parents spent lavishly, money they claimed not to have. My brother strutted like a king, basking in the glory of being the center of attention. And me? I was still invisible in their eyes. But I carried a secret now. I was building a life outside their shadow, a life where I wasn't just the forgotten daughter. Still, the tension grew unbearable. Every family dinner was a reminder that I didn't belong. Every conversation ended with subtle digs about how I'd never amount to anything. The more they mocked me, the harder I worked. Then came the invitation. My parents handed me one with a smirk. The envelope looked the same as everyone else's. But inside was a note that made my stomach twist. On your brother's wedding day, it's better if you're not there. I stared at it, disbelief giving way to a hollow ache. This wasn't just neglect anymore. It was erasure. They weren't ashamed of me quietly. They wanted me gone completely. I had a choice. Stay silent. Disappear as they wished, or stand my ground. For a moment, the old me, the invisible girl, wanted to obey, to slip away unnoticed. But the new me, the one clawing her way toward freedom, refused. Because sometimes the biggest risk isn't showing up. It's letting yourself vanish without a fight. And so I made a decision. If they didn't want me there, fine. But I wouldn't let their cruelty define me anymore. I would walk into that wedding, not as the forgotten daughter, but as the woman they never expected me to become. I didn't know yet what awaited me. I didn't know that the bride herself would become the unexpected voice that shattered the silence. But I knew this much. I wasn't going to hide anymore. Weddings are supposed to be celebrations. But for me, my brother's wedding felt like a battlefield disguised in silk and roses. The hall shimmered with chandeliers. Guests in glittering dresses clinked glasses of champagne, laughter echoing through the air. A string quartet played in the corner, delicate notes rising like perfume. Everywhere I looked, people smiled, embraced, danced, and yet, as I walked in, heads turned. Not in admiration, in shock, in whispers. My parents' faces froze the moment they saw me. My mother's jaw tightened. My father's hand stiffened on his wine glass. They hadn't expected me to show, but I had chosen carefully. My dress was simple but elegant, nothing extravagant. What set me apart was not the fabric I wore, but the fire in my eyes. The first blow, the humiliation began quickly. At the family table, I pulled out a chair. My mother leaned across the table, her voice sharp but low. You shouldn't have come. I kept my hands steady, though they trembled inside. I have as much right to be here as anyone. She smirked, the way she always did when she wanted to remind me I was nothing. Not tonight. Tonight is about him. Don't ruin it. My brother, basking in the adoration of guests, barely glanced my way. He offered a perfunctory smile, then turned his back, as if I were invisible. For a moment, I wondered if they were right. Maybe I shouldn't have come. Maybe my presence was a mistake. But then the speeches began. Public mockery. The microphone passed from hand to hand. Friends toasted the couple, laughing, reminiscing. My father stood last, proud as a king. Glass raised high. He spoke of his son's brilliance, his discipline, his bright future. He spoke of the sacrifices made to build him up, the pride he brought to the family. The crowd applauded, faces glowing with admiration, and then he turned the knife. Some children, he said, voice rich with performative sorrow, make their parents proud. Others? Well, let's just say not everyone is cut from the same cloth. Tonight, we celebrate the one who carried the family name forward, the one who mattered. The words hung heavy in the air. Guests chuckled awkwardly. Some glanced my way, eyes darting with pity. My cheeks burned. My hands clenched into fists beneath the table. I wanted to vanish. But something inside me, the girl who had swallowed shame for years, snapped. I stood. The breaking point. "Excuse me." My voice cut through the hall, sharper than the violin strings. The room fell silent. Every head turned toward me. My father's smile faltered. "You've told a nice story tonight," I said, my voice steady though my chest thundered. "But it isn't the whole story." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother hissed under her breath, "Sit down!" But I didn't. For years I was told I wasn't enough, that my place was in the shadows, that my dreams didn't matter. You mocked me. You dismissed me. You even told me tonight would be better if I wasn't here. The silence grew unbearable. My father tried to interrupt, but I raised my hand. "No, you don't get to silence me this time." I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded certificate, my medical assistant certification. The ink still fresh, the seal shining under the lights. "This," I said, holding it up, "is what you said I could never achieve. I worked nights, studied days, and built something for myself while you told me I was worthless. And while you poured every ounce of love and money into one child, I learned to survive on scraps and still rose." The hall stirred. Murmurs spread. Faces that had looked at me with pity now carried something else. Respect. But I wasn't finished. I turned to my brother, who sat frozen beside his bride. "Congratulations," I said, my tone steady. "But tonight isn't just about you. It's about the truth of this family. A truth everyone here deserves to know." My voice broke slightly, but I pressed on. "You think I'm the shame of this family? No. The shame is the cruelty, the favoritism, the erasure. The shame is parents who mock their own child publicly, who tell her to disappear because she doesn't fit their picture-perfect narrative." I let the words hang. My brother's bride looked between us, her face pale, her grip tightening on his hand, and then she stood. To everyone's shock, she slipped her hand from my brother's and walked toward me. "I didn't know," she whispered, loud enough for the microphone to catch. "No one told me." She turned to the guests. "But what kind of family humiliates their own daughter at her brother's wedding? What kind of parents celebrate one child by crushing another?" The hall erupted. Some guests nodded, whispering agreement. Others looked horrified at my parents. My mother's face went white. My father's jaw trembled. For the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes I had never seen before: fear. I didn't wait for their reply. I placed the certificate on the table in front of them, a symbol of everything they had tried to bury but couldn't. And then, with every eye watching, I turned and walked toward the door. But I didn't walk alone. The bride followed me, her white gown trailing behind like a symbol of defiance. And one by one, a handful of guests rose, some old family friends, some distant relatives, and followed too. The music stopped. The wedding, their perfect celebration, lay shattered in silence. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel invisible. I felt powerful, because in that moment, I hadn't just shown up. I had taken back my voice. When I left the wedding hall that night, I didn't know what would come next. My heart pounded, my hands shook, and for a moment I thought I might collapse from the weight of it all. But then something strange happened. I felt lighter, as though years of chains had been broken with every word I spoke. The wedding had been their stage, their chance to shine, but instead, it became the night the world saw me. And though my parents never admitted it, that night changed everything. Not just for them, but for me too. The days after were not easy. Family gossip spread like wildfire. Some said I ruined the wedding. Others whispered that I was brave. My parents didn't speak to me for weeks, but strangely, I didn't feel the same old desperation for their approval anymore. I had finally realized something. My worth could not be measured by their silence or scorn. Instead of shrinking back, I moved forward. I doubled down on my medical career, working late nights and extra shifts. The money was little, but each paycheck felt like a badge of honor. Every patient I helped reminded me I had purpose far bigger than the approval of two parents who had long since stopped seeing me. Within a year, I landed a stable position at a local clinic. Not glamorous, not flashy, but honest work that allowed me to help people every single day. And for the first time in my adult life, I had savings. A small apartment. A space that was mine. 4 walls filled with quiet peace instead of criticism. Something else happened, too. Word spread. People who had once looked down on me began to approach differently. An aunt who never bothered to ask about my life stopped me one day and said, "I heard you're working at the clinic." That's impressive. It was a small acknowledgement, but it mattered. And then came the bride, my brother's wife. She reached out privately, weeks after the wedding, to thank me again. "You gave me courage," she said. "That night I saw strength in you that I didn't know was possible. And it made me realize I don't have to be silent either." Her words lit a fire in me. Because if my voice, mocked, silenced, dismissed for years, could inspire even one other person, then maybe my pain had not been wasted. So I made a choice. I decided to mentor young women who felt invisible in their own homes, their own families, their own lives. I started small, free sessions at the community center, just conversations about resilience, education, and survival. And slowly, it grew. More women came. Stories poured out, of being overlooked, of dreams ridiculed, of scars hidden under forced smiles. And each time I told them, your worth isn't defined by who ignores you. It's defined by what you choose to build despite them. I didn't have money or fame, but I had experience. And that became my currency. The shift in family, it took years for my parents to even look me in the eye again. They still refused to admit their cruelty, but cracks began to show in their pride. My father, once so arrogant, grew quieter around me. My mother, still stiff, sometimes asked about my work as if testing the waters. And my brother, for a long time he kept his distance, ashamed by how things unfolded at his wedding. But eventually he reached out. Not with excuses, but with honesty. "You didn't deserve that," he admitted once. "I should have stood up for you. I'm sorry, it wasn't everything, but it was something." The woman in the mirror years. Later, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, brushing my hair after a long shift at the clinic. My apartment was small, but filled with warmth. On the wall hung not one, but several framed certificates from trainings and courses I had completed. On a shelf sat cards from patients thanking me for my care, and in the reflection, I didn't see the girl who had been mocked, dismissed, and erased. I saw a woman who had rebuilt herself brick by brick. A woman who had learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk out, and keep walking until you build a path of your own. Years after the wedding, I was invited hesitantly to another family gathering. This time, not as an afterthought, not as someone told to stay away, but as an honored guest. As I walked in, heads still turned. But they didn't turn with whispers. They turned with respect. Because by then, I was no longer the forgotten daughter. I was the woman who had created her own legacy. And when I took my seat, I didn't wait for approval. I already had it, from myself. Redemption doesn't always come wrapped in riches or trophies. Sometimes it comes in the quiet dignity of a life rebuilt. Sometimes it's in the patients who smile when you hold their hand. Sometimes it's in the young women who say, "Because of you, I didn't give up." And sometimes, just sometimes, it comes when the very people who tried to erase you realize they can no longer ignore you. That's the life I live now. Not perfect, not pain-free, but undeniably mine. I am no longer invisible. I am undeniable. Thanks for watching, story lovers. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, what city are you watching from? Because I'd love to see how far our stories travel. They once said I didn't belong, that my laughter was too loud, my dreams too foolish, my presence too heavy. And on the night of my brother's wedding, they decided the family would look better without me in the picture. But here's the truth. Life has taught me. You can erase someone from your photographs, but not from their own destiny, because destiny has a way of writing itself in bold ink, far brighter than the shadows others try to throw on you. What I learned is simple, but not easy. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, night after night. Try again. Courage doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it's just showing up when every voice tells you not to. And redemption? It doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives the day you stop asking permission to exist. So here's my question to you. How many people are sitting quietly in your life right now? Children? Neighbors? co-workers who are being mocked, overlooked, erased. What would happen if, instead of silencing them, we chose to listen? Because the girl my parents wanted hidden is the same woman who today stands in classrooms, clinics, and community halls, reminding others of their worth. The daughter they called useless is the same person now guiding young women toward dreams that no one else believed in. And here's the twist, the one none of us saw coming. Remember that bride at my brother's wedding? The one who stood with me when no one else would? Months later, she told me something that stopped me cold. "You don't know this," she said, "but you're the reason I even found your brother." Years ago, when I was working late nights and doubting my future, I read a small article about a volunteer at the community center who encouraged struggling girls to keep studying. That volunteer was you. You told me I was worth more. I never forgot. Without you, I might not even be here today. Her words echoed louder than any insult I had ever endured. The very person my parents told me not to sit beside, the bride, was standing in front of me saying, "You are the reason I'm here." Do you see the irony? The daughter they wanted erased turned out to be the hidden thread tying the family together. So the next time you see someone invisible, someone mocked, silenced, underestimated, remember this: invisibility is not weakness. It's often the birthplace of strength no one can deny, because sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one who changes it forever. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories and new videos.